The auctioneer's hammer crashed down with a finality that made rancher Coltrane Westfield's stomach turn. Sold to Jeremiah Murdoch for $200. The greasy man in the black coat stepped forward, his yellowed teeth gleaming as he reached for the trembling girl on the platform. Wait. Coltrane's voice boomed across the dusty square of Millbrook Falls, his spurs jangling as he strode through the crowd. I'll pay $300. Murdoch's face twisted with rage. The bid's closed, cowboy. Not if someone's willing to pay more. Coltrane pulled a leather pouch from his vest, coins spilling into his calloused palm. $500, cash. Crowd fell silent. 500 was more than most folks in their small Montana territory saw in 2 years. The auctioneer's eyes widened, and even Murdoch stepped back, his grip loosening on the girl's arm. Persephone Rosewood lifted her chin. Despite the shackles around her delicate wrists, she'd been sold 3 times in as many months, each master worse than the last. This tall rancher with storm-gray eyes and sun-weathered skin looked different, but she'd learned not to trust appearances. Done, the auctioneer stammered, pocketing Coltrane's money faster than a striking rattler. As the crowd dispersed, Coltrane approached the platform where Persephone stood frozen. Up close, he could see the purple bruises on her throat, the fear that flickered behind her defiant emerald eyes. Something primal and protective roared to life in his chest. Name's Coltrane Westfield, he said softly, producing a key for her. Shackles. What do they call you, Persephone? Her voice was barely a whisper, raw from screaming. That's a hell of a name for a hell of a strong woman. Shackles fell away with a metallic clatter. You're free now, Miss Persephone. Free to go wherever you please. She stared at him as if he'd spoken in tongues. Free as the wind. He tipped his hat. Though if you've got nowhere to go, my ranch could use help. Fair wages your own. Room, and nobody touches you without permission. That's a promise. Persephone's legs nearly buckled. Freedom was a word she'd forgotten existed, like hope or kindness. But something in this stranger's voice, in the steady way he met her eyes, without leering, made her nod. I'll work for you, Mr. Westfield, but I won't be owned again. Wouldn't dream of it. Coltrane offered his arm. Let's get you some decent clothes and a hot meal. Then we'll head home. As they walked toward the general store, Murdoch stepped into their path, his hand resting on his gun. That girl's mine by rights. I had the winning bid. Coltrane's expression turned glacial. You had a bid. I had a better one. Mathematics, Murdoch. Maybe have someone teach you sometime. This ain't over, Westfield. It is unless you want to. Discuss it with my Colt. Coltrane's hand drifted to his hip. Your choice. Murdoch spat in the dirt but stepped aside. As they continued walking, Persephone glanced at her unlikely savior, wondering what kind of man paid a fortune for a stranger's freedom and asked nothing in return. 3 weeks later, Persephone stood in the kitchen of the Westfield ranch kneading bread dough with practiced hands. The work was honest, the food plentiful, and Coltrane had kept his word about respect. He treated her like a valued employee, nothing more, nothing less, which made the strange ache in her chest all the more confusing. Morning, Persephone. Coltrane's voice behind her sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. He smelled like leather and pine soap, like safety and strength. Coffee's fresh, she said without turning, afraid he'd see the flush creeping up her neck. Appreciate it. He poured himself a cup, his movements economical and graceful for such a large man. Got word from town. Murdoch's been asking questions about you. Her hand stilled on the dough. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest. He hasn't given up. Coltrane leaned against the counter, studying her profile. Told you that first day you're under my protection. That hasn't changed. I won't bring trouble to your door, Mr. Westfield. Maybe I should move on, like hell. The vehemence in his voice surprised them both. He cleared his throat. What I mean is, you belong here now. This is your home. The word home hit her like a physical blow. She'd never had one. Not really. It's just a series of places where she'd been unwanted, unloved, used up, and discarded. You don't owe me anything, she whispered. You've already done more than any human being deserved. It's not about owing. Coltrane set down his cup. took a step closer. "Persephone, look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. The intensity there made her breath catch. "You're not a debt to be paid or a burden to be shouldered. You're right." Struggled with the words. "You're the best part of my day. Every morning I wake up, hoping you'll still be here. Every night I thank God you are." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Westfield Coltrane. Just Coltrane." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and gently touched her flower-dusted cheek. "I know you've got no reason to trust any man, least of all me. But I'm not going anywhere, and neither should you." The back door exploded inward, splintering as three men burst through. Murdoch led the charge, gun drawn, his face twisted with malicious triumph. "There's my runaway bride," he sneered. "Time to come home, darling." Coltrane stepped in front of Persephone, his hand moving too, his weapon with deadly precision. "You're trespassing, Murdoch. I got a legal claim on that girl. Bought and paid for. Your claim died the moment I outbid you." Coltrane's voice was winter cold. "Walk away while you still can," Murdoch laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 3 against 1 cowboy. I like those odds. Behind him, his companions, rough men with cruel eyes and quick trigger fingers, spread out to flank Coltrane. Persephone pressed against his back, her heart breaking as she realized her freedom might cost this good man his life. "Please," she said, stepping around Coltrane despite his protective arm. "I'll come with you. Just don't hurt him, no?" Coltrane's voice brooked no argument. Not now, not ever. The kitchen crackled with tension, for guns drawn and ready. In the silence, Persephone made a choice that would change everything. "If you want her, you'll have to kill me first," Coltrane said. His Colt steady in his grip. Murdoch's smile was pure poison. "Gladly." The first shot shattered the morning silence. Coltrane dove left, rolling behind the heavy oak table as bullets splintered wood around him. Persephone screamed, pressing herself against the wall. "Stay down." Coltrane shouted, returning. "Fire." One of Murdoch's men spun and fell, clutching his shoulder, but the odds were still against them. Murdoch and his remaining companion had cover behind the doorframe, and Coltrane was pinned down. When his gun clicked empty, Murdoch's laughter filled the smoky kitchen. "Out of bullets, hero? Time to collect my property." That's when Persephone spotted the castron skillet hanging by the stove. Years of abuse had taught her to fight when cornered, and she was done running. As Murdoch stepped into the open, she swung the heavy pan with all her strength. It connected with his skull with a satisfying crack, dropping him like a stone. His gun skittered across the floor. "Behind you," she yelled as the third man aimed at Coltrane's back. Coltrane spun, tackling the gunman. They crashed through the kitchen chairs, fists flying. The stranger was younger and meaner, but Coltrane fought with the desperation of a man protecting everything he held dear. A brutal uppercut sent the gunman reeling. He stumbled backward, tripped over Murdoch's unconscious form, and his head struck the stone hearth with a wet thud. He didn't get up. Breathing hard, Coltrane looked around the destroyed kitchen. The wounded man had fled, Murdoch was out cold, and the third would never threaten anyone again. "Are you hurt?" crossed to Persephone, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries. "I'm fine. You're bleeding." She touched the cut on his forehead where a bullet had grazed him. "I'll live." His eyes were fierce, protective. "This ends now. Murdoch's going to jail, and I'm making sure he never bothers you again." As if summoned by the gunshots, Sheriff Cordavan Thorne arrived with 3 deputies. The grizzled lawmen took in the scene with experienced eyes. "Coltrane, what happened here?" "Murdoch and his boys broke into my home, threatened Persephone. They drew first." The sheriff studied the evidence of the shattered door, the bullet holes, Murdoch's gun on the floor. "Looks like self-defense to me." "We've been wanting an excuse to arrest Murdoch anyway. He's been terrorizing half the territory." As the deputies hauled away the unconscious intruder and the body, Sheriff Thorne pulled Coltrane aside. "You know this won't end with Murdoch, don't you? He's got friends, and they're not the forgiving type. Then I'll deal with them too." Coltrane's voice was granite. "She's under my protection. It might be easier if she was under your name too." The sheriff's weathered face cracked a smile. Just a thought. After the law rode away, Coltrane and Persephone stood in their ruined kitchen, the weight of what had happened settling between them. "I could have gotten you killed," she said, her voice hollow with guilt. "You saved my life." That skill at work was impressive. He tried to lighten the mood, but her expression remained haunted. "This is my fault. I should leave before anyone else gets hurt." "No." He caught her hands, stilling their nervous trembling. "Running won't solve this. Men like Murdoch don't give up. They just find new ways to hurt people. But together, we're stronger than anything they can throw at us." "Together?" The word came, out as a whisper. "If you'll have me." His thumb traced across her knuckles. "Marry me, Persephone, not because you owe me, not for protection, but because I love you. Because I can't imagine waking up in a world without you in it." Persephone stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. "You want to marry me? A woman you bought at auction?" "I want to marry the woman who faced down 3 armed men to protect me. The woman who makes my coffee taste better and my house feel like home. The woman whose strength amazes me every damn day." His voice was rough with emotion. "Your past doesn't define you, Persephone. What you choose to do now does." Tears she'd held back for months finally spilled over. "I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to be loved. Then we'll figure it out together." He wiped her cheeks with his thumbs. "I've never been married either. We'll make mistakes, probably fight like cats and dogs, but we'll do it side by side. What if I can't give you children? What if I'm too damaged to stop?" His voice was fierce. "You're not damaged goods, Persephone Rosewood. You're a survivor. You're perfect exactly as you are." She searched his face, looking for the lie, the hidden agenda, the cruelty that would eventually surface. But all she saw was honest love, patient and unwavering. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you." The kiss that followed was gentle, questioning, nothing like the brutal claim she'd endured before. Coltrane kissed her like she was precious, like she was chosen rather than bought. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Tomorrow," he said against her forehead, "we'll ride to town. Tomorrow, and find Reverend Whitmore. Unless you want a big wedding?" She laughed, the sound surprising them both. "I just want to be your wife." They spent the rest of the day cleaning up the kitchen and making plans. As evening approached, Persephone retreated to her small room off the kitchen, nerves fluttering. In her stomach, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Coltrane entered, carrying a small wooden box. This was my mother's. He opened it to reveal a simple gold band set with a tiny emerald. "She died when I was 12, but she always said this ring was meant for the woman who'd steal my heart. It's beautiful." Persephone's voice was thick with emotion. "She would have hated me. She would have loved you. Any woman strong enough to survive what you've survived, kind enough to care for a stranger's heart, she would have welcomed you with open arms." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "There's something else." He sat beside her on the narrow bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. "After we're married, we don't have to. That is, you can take all the time you need. No pressure, no expectations." Understanding dawned. "You think I'm afraid of you, aren't you, after everything you've endured?" She considered the question seriously. "I was afraid of Murdoch, afraid of the men before him, but you," she touched. His face, marveling at the way he leaned into her palm. "You make me feel safe. You make me feel desired, not used. You are desired. So much it scares the hell out of me." This time she kissed him. Tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, as he responded with careful passion.
Oh.
When his hands tangled in her hair, when he whispered her name like a prayer, she felt something she'd never experienced before. Power. Not the cruel power of ownership, but the sweet power of being cherished. "I love you, Coltrane Westfield," she said against his lips. "And I love you, future Mrs. Westfield." The wedding took place 3 days later in the small white church that served Millbrook Falls. Reverend Whitmore, kindly man with silver hair and laugh lines, performed the ceremony with Sheriff Thorne and his wife as witnesses. Persephone wore a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. Her hair pinned up with wildflowers Coltrane had picked that morning. He wore his best suit. The one he'd been saving for special occasions that never seemed to come until now. Do you, Coltrane Westfield, take Persephone Rosewood to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? I do. His voice was strong, certain. And do you, Persephone? Rosewood, take Coltrane Westfield to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live. Persephone looked into the eyes of the man who'd given her everything freedom. Safety, Lavande felt her own strength reflected back at her. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. The kiss was sweet, full of promise and new beginnings. When they broke apart, Persephone was crying again, but these were tears of joy. Hello, Mrs. Westfield, Coltrane whispered against her ear. Hello, husband. Small celebration afterward was perfect in its simplicity. Mrs. Thorne had baked a cake, and the sheriff produced a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. They toasted the new couple as the sun set over the mountains, but their happiness was short-lived. As they prepared to leave for home, a commotion outside the church caught their attention. Angry voices, the sound of horses, the distinctive jingle of spurs. Coltrane moved protectively in front of Persephone as 5 men dismounted outside. She recognized them immediately. Murdoch's associates. It's the kind of men who solved problems with bullets. The leader, a scarred man named Vance Kruger, pushed through the church doors without ceremony. Heard there was a wedding today, he said, his voice deceptively casual. Come to give my congratulations to the happy couple. Church is closed, Sheriff Thorne said, his hand moving to his gun. Now, Sheriff, that's no way to treat guests. Kruger's men spread out, surrounding the small wedding party. We just want to collect what's ours. The lady is my wife now, Coltrane said, his voice deadly calm. She's not going anywhere. Your wife? Kruger laughed. Oh, son, you married stolen property. Murdoch had legal claim to that girl. Murdoch's in jail and his claim died with his crimes, Sheriff Thorne interjected. Murdoch's dead. Someone bashed his skull in during a jailbreak this morning. Kruger's smile was pure malice. Shame, really. He was looking forward to collecting his bride. Persephone felt the blood drain from her face. Murdoch was dead, but his men were here, and they looked ready for violence. What do you want? She asked, stepping beside her husband, despite his protective gesture. Justice. Murdoch paid good money for you, and now you're going to work off that debt. One way or another. Over my dead body, Coltrane snarled. That can be arranged. Kruger drew his gun with practiced ease, though I'd prefer not to whittle the lady on her wedding day. Be ashamed to stain that pretty dress with blood. The church fell silent, except for the whisper of wind through the open door. 5 guns against 2, with innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. But Persephone had learned something important over the past weeks. She wasn't helpless anymore. I have a better idea, she said, her voice clear and strong. Single combat. Your best man against my husband. Winner takes all. Kruger's eyebrows shot up. Single combat. What is this? The Dark Ages? It's justice, Persephone said, her chin raised defiantly. If Murdoch truly had a legal claim, let God decide through trial by combat. Your champion against mine, Persephone. No, Coltrane said under his breath. I won't gamble with your life. It's not your choice, she replied quietly. It's mine. Kruger considered the proposal, his scarred face thoughtful. And if my man wins, I go with you willingly. No resistance, no more running. And if your husband wins, this ends forever. You ride away and never come back. Done. Kruger holstered his weapon, but we choose the method. Knives, not guns. More ... personal. Coltrane's jaw tightened. He was a fair hand with a blade, but knife fighting was an ugly business, often decided by luck as much as skill. Accepted, Persephone said before he could protest. 20 minutes later, the entire town had gathered in the dusty main street. Word of the combat had spread like wildfire. Even the saloon girls had come out to watch. Kruger's champion was a man called Razor Pete, a Mexican with prison tattoos and dead eyes. He tested his blade, a wicked curved thing that gleamed. In the afternoon sun, Coltrane stripped off his wedding jacket, rolling up his sleeves. His knife was simpler, a hunting blade he'd carried for 20 years, but it was sharp and familiar in his grip. "First blood or death?" Kruger asked. "Death," Persephone said, ignoring Coltrane's sharp look. "This ends today, one way or the other." Combatants circled each other in the makeshift ring formed by the crowd. Razor Pete moved like a snake, all flowing motion and sudden strikes. Coltrane was steadier, more methodical, but that might not be enough. The first clash came fast and brutal. Steel rang against steel as Pete lunged forward in a flurry of cuts that forced Coltrane back on his heels. The Mexican was skilled, no doubt about that, but Coltrane had advantages of his own longer reach, superior strength, and something worth fighting for. As the battle continued, it became clear this wouldn't be quick. Both men bled from minor cuts, their shirts torn and stained. The crowd watched in tense silence, the only sounds the scrape of boots on dirt and the deadly whisper of blade on blade. Pete overextended on a particularly vicious thrust. Atea and Coltrane seized the opening. His knife punched deep between the Mexicans' ribs, finding the heart with surgical precision. Pete's eyes widened in surprise, then went vacant. He toppled forward into the dust. Coltrane stood over the body, breathing hard, blood trickling from a dozen small wounds. But he was alive, and he was victorious. "It's done," he said, looking directly at Kruger. "Honor the agreement." For a moment, violence crackled in the air. Kruger's remaining men looked ready to draw their guns and end this the messy way. Then their leader nodded slowly. "A deal's a deal. Mount up, boys. We're riding out." As the gunmen disappeared in a cloud of dust, Persephone ran to her husband, checking his wounds with gentle fingers. "You magnificent fool," she whispered. "You could have been killed." "I wasn't." He cupped her face, studying her as if memorizing every detail. "Are you hurt? Did anyone?" "I'm fine. We're both fine." She kissed him fiercely, tasting salt and copper in victory. "Take me home, husband. Take me home." 1 year later, Persephone Westfield stood in her vegetable garden. One hand pressed to her swollen belly, the other shading her eyes as she watched. Her husband worked with the horses in the corral. The pregnancy had been a surprise, a gift neither of them had dared hope for. After everything she'd endured, the doctors had warned that children might not be possible. But life, it seemed, had its own plans. "Coltrane," she called. "The baby's kicking again." He dropped the halter he'd been mending and crossed the yard. In long strides, his face lighting up with the wonder that never seemed to fade. Kneeling beside her chair, he pressed his ear to her belly. "I'll be damned. This little one's going to be a fighter like his mama." Or her mama, Persephone corrected, running her fingers through his sun-bleached hair. "We don't know yet. Don't care either way, long as the baby's healthy." He looked up at her, love shining in his gray eyes. "How are you feeling? Is any pain?" "Just the usual aches. Mrs. Thorne says that's normal." She smiled at his protective hovering. "I'm not made of glass, you know. You're precious cargo now. Both of you are." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Coltrane tensed, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun, but relaxed when he recognized Sheriff Thorne's distinctive bay gelding. "Afternoon, folks," the lawman called, dismounting with a grunt. "Got some news I thought you'd want to hear." "Good. News or bad?" Coltrane asked, helping Persephone to her feet. "Depends on your perspective. Vance Kruger's dead. Caught a bullet in a saloon fight down in Colorado territory. His whole gang scattered to the four winds." Persephone felt a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying lift from her shoulders. "It's really over?" "It's over," the sheriff confirmed. "You can stop looking over your shoulder now." That evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Persephone reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been in town that day?" she asked, leaning against Coltrane's shoulder. "Every day. But then I remember that everything that came before, all the pain, all the hardship it brought you. To me, and I can't regret anything that led to this moment, even paying $500 for a wife, she teased. Best investment I ever made. He kissed the top of her head. Though technically, I paid for your freedom. The wife part was a bonus. A bonus? The greatest gift I've ever received. His hand found hers, their wedding rings catching the last rays of sunlight. I love you, Mrs. Westfield. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. And I love you, Mr. Westfield. My rescuer, my husband, my heart. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they felt their child move between them, new life born. From love rather than transaction, hope rather than despair. In the distance, a coyote howled, wild and free. Persephone smiled, understanding the sound in a way she never had before. She too had been wild once, trapped and desperate. But love had tamed the fear without breaking her spirit, had given her a home without taking away her strength. The rancher had indeed paid for her freedom that day in the dusty square of Millbrook Falls. But in the end, they'd both gotten something far more valuable than either had bargained for. They'd gotten forever.